Good morning, friends. Good morning. There we go. Instagram is up now. How are you guys today? If you're watching, just pop it on in the comments. Let me know how you're doing. I've had better days. I've had better mornings. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know if you can see how puffy my eyes are. Cried myself to sleep last night. And it really wasn't even a coronavirus, self-distancing, self-isolation, whatever. Sorry, I'm shaking the table. It was just like a personal thing that snowballed. And yeah, so I threw a hat on to cover up my crazy hair. This is the shirt I slept in. It is what it is. So how are y'all today? I want to talk to you about something I think is really important in this time that we're in. And I'm going to be really real with you guys today. As you can see, like I'm looking a hot mess this morning. I slept a little later than I had intended. I haven't done laundry in like 3 days. Yes, I've been home doing homeschool and stuff. Homeschool doesn't take all day. I haven't probably been the best mom and wife that I could and should be. So what do I do with that? You know? What do I do with that? So if you're watching, let me know how you're handling being at home. Let me know how you're handling quarantine, sheltering in place, whatever it's called. Because honestly, today I'm not handling it too great. Not handling it too great. What you doing, bud? I came to you guys a little early. I usually come on right at 11. I started a little early because we have class. Liam has class online at 11:30. Yeah, that's Liam over there. Again, if you're watching, say hey. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my computer. I'm trying to share this video for my friends to see. If you're watching, I'd love for you to share it as well. And, you know, I think it's important to say in this time that we're living in that we are all struggling. If you're struggling, pop a comment with a hand raise emoji or a heart emoji or whatever if you're struggling. I'm struggling today, guys. I'm having a little bit of a hard time. I'm trying to stay positive, but when you're thrown into times like this, it brings about a lot of self-reflection, and it brings about a lot of emotions, I guess, and I can be very critical of myself. And so in this time of, where I'm supposed to be like able to do all the stay-at-home mommy things, I'm supposed to be able to do all the stay-at-home mommy things, and I'm not doing them. It makes me feel bad about myself. It makes me feel like I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough wife. I'm not a good enough person, woman.
Not even
Thanks, Betty. Liam said I'm a good wife. So when I personally am used to going out and doing things. That's Elijah's cup.
I'm going to put the mic in it.
Okay, hand it here. Let me open it, please.
Okay.
You're probably going to have to pour. There's a little bit of milk in it. So pour that out. Unless he's wanting ice in that. You ask him. Otherwise, pour it out. So you know, I do a lot of self-reflecting when I'm here at home, and, you know, and I look around, and, you know, and I see other people too that I feel like are doing and handling this so much better and with so much more grace than me. It's really hard, you know? It's really hard to, to feel like you're measuring up, it's really hard to measure up when you don't feel like you're measuring up, right? When you don't feel like, you know, you've got it all together and, you know, whatnot. So, like, yesterday, you know, I talked to you guys about how, like, in this time, like, it's like every day something new is happening, something else is going on. Like yesterday, you know, I have two part-time jobs, and I'm basically out of work for at least another month. And that's really hard for me. And then I look around my house, you know, and I see, like, laundry that I'm not doing. I see dishes that I don't do. My husband does dishes. And I look at myself and I'm like, what kind of person am I that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And I look at, like, this homeschooling stuff, and I have friends who are, you know, doing this homeschool like a boss. And, you know, they're, like, so organized and stuff. And I'm just, like, I struggle with that because I am not a teacher. I'm not a homeschool mom, you know. And so, like, all of these things that, you know, we feel like I feel like I'm supposed to be good at. I'm a woman. I'm supposed to be good at homeschooling. I'm supposed to be good at laundry. I'm supposed to be good at being a wife. And, like, you know, like, how do we get past that? How do we deal with that? In this time of my glasses are fogging up again, I'm supposed to be able to get on here and do a devotion without, like, losing it, right? I'm supposed to have my stuff together, right? Hang on.
I'm
Here you
going to
go,
open
buddy.
it.
Oh, open it?
Yes.
Okay. Bring it back to me and I'll put the lid back on it, okay? You know, it's like, but I'm here to tell you guys, I'm a real person with real doubts and real fears and real stress. And, you know, I personally can be very hard on myself. Okay, you need to put this back on? Okay. There you go. And I find myself there today. I find myself at the place where, like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm not, like, being a good enough mom or wife or homeschool parent or stay-at-home mom or housekeeper. God knows, like, that's not my forte. I hate all the cleaning house stuff. And so, thank you, Katie. I think somebody else posted that they were praying for me. Thank you so much. So I'm just being real with you guys today. I hope that's okay. I'm sorry I'm such a wreck. But what I want to say to you is I read something a friend of mine posted on Facebook yesterday. And Brooke, if you're watching, thank you for your Facebook post. But I read, you know, where she was talking about, you know, like, she was in bed, like, all day yesterday. You know, when you're a parent, of course, you can't be in bed all day as much as you want to. And it's like, you know, she was talking about how we really have to give ourselves grace. And that's really hard. It's really hard to give yourself grace, you know? It's really hard to go against what has been, like, ingrained in you forever, you know? Like, you know, growing up and what society thinks that you should do. And, you know, it's really hard to give yourself grace when you've got this notion of what you are supposed to be as opposed to what you actually are.
What's wrong, Mama?
I'm okay, buddy. And, you know, it's like, how do you overcome that, right? How do you get past this notion of, I'm supposed to be this, but today or every day, I'm just not. Like, you know, I mean, for example, like my mom worked from home. And I'm here to tell you, my house was always clean when I was a kid. Always. Baseboards were clean, windows were clean, sheets were clean, laundry was done and folded and put away. Dishes were always done. Like, my house was always clean. And I look back at that, and then I look at my house, and I'm like, I'm so not that woman. Like, if you saw my laundry room, it's like a bomb went off of there. And so, like, it's like we work against this, what we think we're supposed to be, like this life that we think we're supposed to be living up to, right? And in this time of like we're staying at home and we're stuck here, and like we have all these things that are like out of our control, right? And you know, and it's like every day something else like hits you, and like every day, you know, you're being like bombarded with something new, you know, and so, you know, what do? How do you give yourself grace? How do you do that? And I'm struggling with that today. And, you know, it's really hard to like get on here. I promised you guys I would do devotion every day at 11, and that's what I'm doing. And, you know, when I almost didn't even do it today because I'm like, I mean, guys, look at me. I look like a wreck. I'm on here like weeping, and that's just not what I want to like give you guys. You know, I want to be a better person for you guys, and I want to be able to encourage you guys, but it's hard to do that sometimes when I can't encourage myself, you know. But I'm just being real with you guys today, so I hope that's okay. But I wanted to talk about, you know, how do we give ourselves grace? Like, how do we do that? Like, what are some steps that we can take? And so I did a little bit of study, a little bit of research into my dear friend and pastor's wife wrote a book about grace. It's called From Grief to Grace. Her name is Denisha Patterson. So if you need a good read, like head on over to Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to PentecostalPublishingHouse.com, or you can just reach out to her and she can send you one. You can buy it from her. But you know, how do we give ourselves grace? And like the first thing that comes to mind is like acceptance. Like we have to learn to accept, number one, there are things that are just beyond our control. Like this whole me not being able to work is completely out of my control. I have no control over this. And so we have to learn to like accept that we can't do anything about that. Like that's completely out of our control, right? And we have to, like, the first step to giving ourselves grace is just to accept, like, those things are beyond our control. Like, there are things that we can't change. There are people that we can't change, right? And, like, even in our own house, like, you can't change the people in your house. You can only change yourself, right? And so acceptance of things that you can't change, like, that's one of, I think, the first steps of, like, giving yourself grace is accepting what you can't change. You know, we can't change what is going on in our world today as far as like global pandemic and sheltering in place and closings and all that kind of stuff. And you know, another thing I think it's really important is to accept that what societal or cultural norms are, whatever your belief system is of what you're supposed to be, just might not be accurate. Because you're not supposed to be anything more than the person God made you to be. You know? And if that person is not like your mama, and I love my mama so much, I think she's amazing, and sorry guys, you know, but I'm not like, I am like her in many ways, but I'm not like her in many ways, and it's hard to get past, you know, that, but we have to accept that who we are is not necessarily who our mind thinks we're supposed to be, right? Or who anybody else thinks we're supposed to be, you know, like, I'm so sorry guys. You're not supposed to be anything other than what God made you to be, you know? So we have to accept that who we are might not be who society thinks we should be, or who our best friend thinks we should be, or who our Aunt Becky thinks we should be, or whatever, you know, like, we have to accept that, right? And again, I know it's hard. It's really hard. And like on days like today, it's really hard for me, you know, like, because I'm really struggling with it. I'm sorry I'm such a wreck today, guys. But we have to accept who we are. We have to accept who God made us to be, right? And then another step is forgiveness. You know, forgiveness of not just other people, but when you're trying to give yourself grace, you have to forgive yourself for your own shortcomings and your own weaknesses, right? It's part of who you are. And yes, when you have shortcomings and weaknesses, there are things that you can work on, that you can make better. You can make yourself a better person. And I'm totally on board with that. I totally agree with that. I don't think you should use the don't judge me mentality. I'm using air quotes a lot today. Sorry. But this don't judge me mentality, don't use that as a crutch to not be the best person you can be. But on days where you're really struggling and you need to give yourself grace for those weaknesses and those shortcomings, I think it's really important that you do that we learn to give grace for our weaknesses and for our shortcomings. And, you know, on days when, you know, maybe we just weren't the best mom we could be, or maybe we just weren't the best wife or the best person really that we could have been, we need to learn to forgive ourselves for that and say, okay, now I'm going to be better. Now I'm going to do better. Sorry. You know, we need to learn to basically just forgive ourselves and say, you know what? Today wasn't my day. Today I am a wreck. Today I'm a wreck. And when we are trying to give ourselves grace, we need to give ourselves forgiveness for not being the person that we could be. Because guess what? Sometimes we're just not that person every day. We're just not that person every day. And right now, when we're all stuck at home and we're all thrown into this world in this life that we didn't imagine for ourselves, you know, I feel like for me, like, it's been multiple days where I wasn't the best person that I could be, you know, like, and so learning to give ourselves grace in those times where, you know, we just kind of fall, you know, we fall and we don't do as good as we could, as good as, you know, I don't want to say we should, because saying as good as we should is sometimes placing unrealistic expectations on ourselves, but we know how good we can be. And when we don't measure up, we've got to learn to forgive ourselves and pick up the pieces and move on and do better. Do better tomorrow. Do better after you finish watching this video. I'm going to get the laundry done today, guys. So giving yourself grace. Did y'all hear Liam, by the way? He said, haha, no, she's not. My kids know me better than I know myself. But when we're giving ourselves grace, we have to show forgiveness to ourselves. And then the last thing I think that really helps give ourselves grace, especially in hard times, is love. We have to, first of all, love God. And sorry, guys. Love God. Because if we can love God through this hard time, one of my favorite scriptures is 2 Corinthians 12:9, and it says, Jesus is speaking here, and he says, my grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Yeah, buddy.
Can I watch TV? Turbo Toy Time, please.
Just for a minute. Because you're fixing to have school, buddy. When we are weak, if we can learn to turn our eyes to God and love God in our weakness, then his grace will be made manifest in our life, right? His grace will be sufficient to get us through this time of self-doubt and not feeling like we're our best person, right? Not feeling like we're at 100%, right? And so the first thing is that we have to love God, I'm sorry. I can't help it, guys. That's what I'm saying. I almost didn't even do devotion today because I'm getting text messages. I love all my people. Because I knew I was going to be a wreck. And I don't like for people to see me like this. I like to be put together. That's one of those things that my mom taught me, you need to be put together. You don't let people see. And it's not a bad thing, I'm not talking bad about my mom. I love my mom, but it's hard to let people see vulnerability, But we have to love God, because if we can learn to love God even in our own weakness, then, his grace will help us get through such difficult times, right? We've got to love others. We have to show grace to others. We have to realize that other people are having just as hard of a time as we are, right? Other people are struggling just like we are, And, we've got to give grace. Part of, I think, showing yourself grace is being able to show grace to other people, right? Not holding them to a standard that is unrealistic, right? And I kind of think the school system right now is holding me to a standard that's really unrealistic. Kidding. My boys' school has been very wonderful, so I can't say anything, but again, we've got to learn to give grace to other people, to not hold them to this standard that's gonna make them feel like they're not reaching what they're supposed to be, right? They're not reaching this level of unattainability. So giving love and grace to other people, I think, is also a big part of showing yourself grace, And then at the end of the day, We just got to give ourselves grace, and we've got to love ourselves. And we've got to love ourselves as the person that God made us to be, and not as the person that maybe society thinks we are. Or maybe we have to love ourselves just as we were created to be. And we are imperfect. We're not put together every day. You guys, I know I post pretty pictures on social media. I like pretty pictures. I am very self-conscious about my appearance. I will probably never rewatch this video ever because I hate the way I look right now. But I like pretty pictures because when I have a picture that makes me feel pretty, makes me feel good about myself. And that might sound superficial, but give me some grace. But I'm super self-conscious about my appearance. And, you know I post a lot of pretty pictures. I know I post a lot of pictures of, my handsome little kids and my good-looking husband. But, I don't always have it put together. And, learning to love myself even on days when I feel really ugly and feel like I'm not a good enough woman or mother or wife or housekeeper or cook. Jesus be a fence. One day I'm going to cook things my family likes to eat. Hey, Liam. Liam, can you bring Mommy a tissue, please? Or just bring me the whole box. I'm running out of tissues. Quickly. But learning to, really just love yourself and love who God made you to be, even if that looks different than what you think society thinks you should be, right? I've always looked different than what society thought I should look like,
I brought you a lot.
Oh, thank you, Betty. You're so kind. When you're talking to yourself, right? I talk to myself. If you don't talk to yourself, stop lying. You do. And I can be really hard on myself. I can look in the mirror and just be like, why did you eat the muffins for breakfast, Summer? Muffins are my favorite. I can be really hard on myself, and I can look at my house and, my baseboards are dusty and dirty, and I'm like, why aren't you a better housekeeper? Why aren't you a better mom? Why did you get mad and scream at your kids? Or, why did, you make your husband feel bad about something? Or, why aren't you a better person or whatever? I can be, and I think all of us, I feel like that's a pretty broad spectrum thing, we could all be really hard on ourselves, and I think it's so important that we, when you're being hard on yourself, think, if this were my best friend and I heard my best friend say something like, I'm not a good mom, what would you say to her? If my best friend, who I think is watching right now, Natalie, if I ever heard her say that she wasn't a good mom, I would tell her she was crazy, that she's an awesome mom, because I've known her since 6th grade and I know the kind of person she is. And, and I would say all the things that would try to lift her up. And it's hard to say those. Why? Why is it hard to say this to yourself? Why are we so critical of our own selves, But during this time of, difficulty in our world and in our life, it's so important that we give ourselves the grace that we need. It's important that we, when we think about talking bad to ourselves about ourselves, we think, what would my best friend say to me? I know my closest friends would tell me that I'm doing a great job. They would tell me that, I'm a good mom. They would tell me that my house looks great. They would, Or they would tell me that they couldn't care less if my laundry's done or that my baseboards are dusty or whatever, you know? Like, I know what my friends would say, because I have great friends. If your friends wouldn't lift you up, you need new friends, okay? But it's so important that, you know, we give ourselves grace during this time of just really, really difficult times, really hard times, you know? And I want to read that scripture one more time because I want us to remember that God's grace is perfect. God's grace is the standard by which we should give ourselves grace, right? In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Jesus said, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." So, anytime you need grace, just know that that's the time that God's strength will be made more perfect in your life. That's the time, because that's when you're going to lean on Him the most, right? Is when you're weak. You need the strength of God. You need the strength of the Holy Spirit that lives inside of you so that you don't fall apart and do half-hour-long devotion videos of you crying like a freak. So, I have to wrap this up. Because my son has school in about 5 minutes. If any of his classmates are watching, his classmate parents are watching, we might be late. But you know, I really didn't intend to cry the whole time. I'm sorry, guys. But I think it's important that we understand that we're all in this together. We're all in this boat together. We need to give each other grace, and we need to give ourselves grace. And I'm trying. And I hope you guys are trying too. And let's lift each other up and encourage each other. And I will try my best to not cry tomorrow. If I cry all day like this, my eyes will be swollen shut, you guys. I'm not kidding. They were swollen up already. And that's one reason why I have the hat and glasses on. I was hoping that you wouldn't be able to see quite how bad I look. But you know, like I don't even know what's happening there. But I love you guys. And I just wanted to get on here and remind you to give yourself grace. Accept things you can't change. Accept that there are things out of your control, even within yourself. Accept who God made you to be, even if it doesn't look like who Aunt Becky thinks you should be or whoever. I don't know why Becky popped in my head, but whatever. Forgive others and forgive yourself. Love God, love others, and love yourself. Jesus said, "My grace is sufficient." The right kind of grace only comes from the throne of grace. It only comes from the one who died so that we could be free. The real, true grace only comes from the God who gave His life for us when we were still sinners, when we didn't deserve it. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope in some little way this encouraged you, even though I was crying the whole time. And I will see you guys again tomorrow at 11 a.m. I love you all. Bye.